Well, have you seen on our fancy thumbnail, Tua Tagovailoa is the cover athlete for the part 1 of the week 4 preview here on the Audible, and he's banged up. And they said it was a back, even though it seems like a concussion. League's investigating it. I don't know what that investigation led to, Bloom. But Miami, they are feeling themselves on a roll, of course. Now on Thursday Night Football, now traveling to Cincinnati, now with the banged up Tua. What does that mean for the Dolphins on Thursday night?
Yeah, this is a nice change of pace from the primetime games we got last week, right? There's going to be, if not some good offensive play, some really good defensive play to contain these quarterbacks. Before I launch into the Miami take, since we are talking about the South Florida team, again, I'm pretty preoccupied watching what's going to happen to everybody, what's happening. So definitely thoughts, prayers, good vibes, strength to everybody down in Southwest Florida right now. And look, fantasy football community, we've been really good at picking each other up. And I think there's going to be a lot of people down in Southwest Florida that are going to need our help. So let's just keep that in mind. And, there'll be a football game to watch. And with Miami, what you had here was actually, even though Miami won the game, and this is just such a great showdown, because you saw Cincinnati as a surprise Super Bowl team last year. Maybe it won't be a surprise if they keep playing like this, but Miami has designs. And really, Buffalo's game plan was good. They kept Tua on the sidelines. Tua got banged up in that game too. They kept that offense on the sidelines and control the time possession. So they weren't really able to get that fatigue effect, even though there were a lot of fatigued Buffalo players because of the heat and the humidity. And maybe we'll see this offense operate better. But like you said, Cease, Tua's hurt, back, concussion, whatever. And Cincinnati's defense had their best performance of the year last week. So Tua's kind of a boom bust play here if you're looking at him as your quarterback. We're just going to wait for some more clarity on Mostert versus Edmonds. Now it's Edmonds getting the goal line carries, whatever. They're both what the heck flexes. Not necessarily a great offensive outlook here, partially because Jalen Waddle has a groin issue he's nursing. You're still going to play him. And just the potential upside is too good to leave him on your bench. But it could mean more Tyreek Hill. But remember, we saw Tyreek Hill kind of taken out of the game last week by Buffalo, even though they had a bunch of backup defensive backs in. So you short week, you hope Cincinnati has a chance to look at what Buffalo did. But I think one of the biggest things was that they kept the Miami offense on the sidelines. Last thing I'm going to watch here again, someone needs to get Mike McDaniel the scouting report for Mike Gesicki so he understands that he's a receiving tight end, not a blocking tight end. Maybe if Waddle is not 100%, we could see more Gesicki, but I think this is going to continue to be frustrating.
This is a practice issue.
Oh.
Yeah, so here's what I'm going to get for Mike Gesicki, and
yeah.
I'll defend Mike Bloom. Here's what I'm going to get for Mike Gesicki. Learn how to flip and practice. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
If you do that, you're going to get playing time.
It's like parenting, right? I mean, there's definitely a parenting angle where it's like, I'm going to be hard on you because if you actually get it, then when you on the other side of that, you're going to take it to a new level, and I'm not going to compromise. And it's interesting to think about that from Gesicki's standpoint, but at least it gives us some hope that maybe he can get it.
Yeah, some hope that it's out there. The Bengals, they're full of hope, and they're full of a quarterback that gets sacked left and right. Mixon is supposedly okay in this one. So, all right, you're at home. You're facing a hot Miami team that is, again, full of confidence. How do the Bengals then respond? Mainly, are they going to protect Joe Burrow better?
Right. Well, and it's not just protecting Joe Burrow, because I think they've been middle of the road at protecting Joe Burrow, but he was taking a ton of sacks. And I think that we can get into this analysis level, Cease, where we can say there are sacks that are on the quarterback, there are sacks that are on the offensive line, and there are sacks that are just really good plays by the defense, where the defense just plays coverage and diagnoses a play perfectly, and the quarterback has to take the sack. It's not really on the offense at all. And I think that Burrow's been causing a lot of his sacks. Now, last week against the Jets, it got better. I think he was playing more within himself, and he's going to have to do that. Miami, Josh Boyer still there from the previous Brian Flores regime, really putting a lot of pressure, making the quarterback make decisions quickly. And that's not necessarily Joe Burrow's strong suit in terms of how this is a live to die another day. How many times do we see players like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning back in the day? They would just sit down, right? They wouldn't even take a hit. When they saw the pressure was closing in, they would just sit down and say, okay, too bad, sack, throw the ball away, take a seat. Joe Burrow doesn't have that in him, and it's great for the fight that it puts in his team, but it's one of those things that's going to be tested in this one. So like Tua, he's a boom bust play. This could be a defensive battle. We should see a lot more mixing. I think that you want to keep this offense on schedule. Now he's got an ankle issue coming in. P. Ryan is a deep what the heck flex. Maybe we'll even see a little more Chris Evans sprinkled in. Let's also watch so many injury questions about this game on the short week, because you also had T. Higgins. Sure looked like he might have had another concussion. He came in the game again. And also you can see when Higgins and Chase are both healthy, they're pretty close in terms of fantasy value, maybe even equal, which is not necessarily what ADP reflected. That's not necessarily saying Chase was a bad pick, but I think that Higgins is going to be somebody who puts his stamp on this offense. And then you have Boyd, who remains a what the heck flex, but you saw him come through last week on the quick hot read. These are the kinds of things that Joe Burrow is going to have to do. Get the ball out of his hands quickly. So maybe Boyd can make another big play on one of those like he did last week. I did see Brian Callahan say something like, we want Hayden Hurst to get 5 for 50 every week. He hasn't got 5 for 50 yet. So we'll see how that goes. A very entertaining game, Cease, but maybe not if you're counting on this game for fantasy production.
Yeah, there's not the fantasy points you're looking for. And is Samaje P. Ryan my sleeper of the week?
Ooh.
I love a big back, and I cannot lie. That's coming up a little bit later. Let's talk about Minnesota and the Saints. Just saw a practice report for Jameis not practicing today. Yeah. We'll talk about the Saints side in a little bit. Well, let's go over the Vikings side because are the Vikings the most overhyped team? I was asked that question after week 1. I was like, no. And now I'm thinking, well, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. And we'll see about Dalvin Cook. Double brace, right? Does he have a shoulder pad under the shoulder pad?
Right.
Like some sort of conconnection to get out there on the football field. So what does that mean for Alexander Madison? What does it mean for Wangwu? The guys behind him actually are more exciting to me. But for now, and then what was the title of On the Couch this week? What's wrong with Justin Jefferson?
What's up with Justin Jefferson?
What's up with you? See, not wrong. On the Couch, you would never declare it as
that's right.
Wrong.
We're not judgmental.
You'd say, what's up with Justin Jefferson? So Bloom?
Yeah, what's up?
What's up?
What's up? I think it's been matchups. And by the way, this matchup for Saints fans down here. The Minneapolis Miracle losing in overtime. By the way, Dalvin Cook was wearing a harness in that overtime playoff win. He had 2 touchdowns in that game. I think he also caught 3 passes for 36 yards. He also had a 200-yard game and 2 touchdowns against the Steelers last year with a harness. Now, that was under Mike Zimmer, and those games were closer to the end of the season. Dr. Gene did confirm for me in a little conversation we had behind the scenes that Cook can't really make the injury worse by playing with a harness. And Gene said he was surprised he wasn't playing with a harness just to begin the season because it stabilizes the joint, which the labrum is supposed to do, which is torn. It could maybe extend recovery time for the current injury, but that's a pain tolerance kind of thing, a range of motion kind of thing. Cook's used to playing with torn up shoulders. So again, the variable here is it's earlier in the season and it's a different regime, so they might handle it differently, but I think you're still going to play Cook. And unless we hear something affirmative that says they're going to split the workload down the middle, or maybe Cook's even going to be the change of pace to Madison while letting that shoulder injury resolve itself, Madison's more of a what the heck flex. You do have Kirk Cousins coming on here, and the question is, as you led with, what's up with Justin Jefferson? The first week, like we talked about, Ian Harditz and I on the couch, everything went exactly the way we'd hoped, right? He schemed up against linebackers. Green Bay said they felt like they had to play zone because of all the pre-snap motion. And then you get to week 2, and it's just a miserable game against Philadelphia, who has Darius Slay, among others. And you get to week 3, not a great game for him, Jeff Okudah, and also lots of double teams. So I think you're not benching Justin Jefferson, but when you project this game, you should be more inclined to play Adam Thielen and especially KJ Osborne. Here was the game-winning drive: a 28-yard pass to KJ Osborne and another 28-yard pass to KJ Osborne for a touchdown. That's it. That's all. That's the whole drive. So maybe that carries over. I don't think we're ready to trust Irv Smith yet. And this New Orleans defense is tough. So, Cecil, you could go on a little rant here or give people some information or insight into Dennis Allen as a head coach. I think one of my favorite Twitter accounts here in New Orleans said something like, here's what Dennis Allen's going to do. He's just going to write turnovers on the board. That's going to fix it. I mean? Right. So that's the thing. Like, on one hand, you have a New Orleans defense that in a gut check game, because they have still played pretty well, is going to maybe want to take control and say, well, I guess we have to do this. But then again, there might be a new quarterback and you have Dennis Allen. You wonder what kind of captain of the ship he can be. We're going to find out.
You know what Dennis Allen is he's a bad method actor. Like he studied it. He's been there with it.
Right.
It was like, he's sitting there, Al Pacino, right? He's studying up Mike Shanahan for any given Sunday. And then Dennis Allen goes out there and does his best Al Pacino, except he actually has the job.
I cannot control the volume of my voice.
Look at it, dude. It's underrated. Yeah. It's our guy, man. Yes. Yeah. And if you love the Audible, then you love Underrated. And you also love the intro songs that he's done over the years for us. So appreciate you, as always, my friend, for jumping in here to the Audible Week 4 preview. Oh, we got to do the Saints side.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about Underrated and rap and hip hop. And that's more exciting than the Saints side, because we're wondering also, Michael Thomas is probably not going to play. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, a lot to sort through here, because Jeff Duncan reporting this morning that it looks different than it has been in practices, because Andy Dalton took the first team snaps and Taysom Hill took some snaps as the reserve quarterback. So it seems as if they're preparing for the possibility of no Jameis Winston. And there's two layers to this, right? And it's Dennis Allen calling the shots, remember? There's two layers to this. There's that Winston's pretty banged up, and it may just be beneficial to let him rest a week for his own sake. But also, he's throwing the ball downfield, as Ian Hartitz laid out on the couch yesterday. He's throwing the ball downfield in unprecedented fashion, which is kind of like unchecked Jameis, right? I mean, that was the whole point of Jameis and Sean Payton, is that Sean Payton improves quarterbacks and helps them find their best game. And then you have Jameis just regress back to bad old Jameis. And that was great for Chris Olave in terms of fantasy. But you have a lot of different ripple effects here. It's been bad for Alvin Kamara, for instance. So if Andy Dalton's in, you think Olave down, but probably still in, because with Thomas and Landry, I think it was a foot for Landry and a toe for Thomas. The good news for Thomas is it's not the same foot ankle as the one that got messed up for the last 2 years. So it's probably not a compensatory injury or something like that. But it's hard to say at this point whether they're going to play and whether they're going to be limited or not. So Olave is probably still a good play. And Kamara would become a much better play with Andy Dalton. I mean, doesn't Andy Dalton seem like much more the type of quarterback who's just going to target him, check down, the opposite in some ways of Winston. So we have to watch here, because this is a quarterback change where it might not necessarily be that much of a drop in terms of scoring drives and first downs. It is going to be a big drop in ADOT. It is going to be a big drop in terms of the approach of the passing game. So this is something we're going to watch, and really you have two entirely different pictures of this offense. And then Cecil started to ask, well, if Dalton goes out and wins this game, what does that mean for the next week? I think this one's also in London. So even more to think about there, as these teams are out of their element.
More to think about as we continue with the Week 4 preview, part 1 here on the Audible. It's the Browns and the Falcons. That's our next game that we're going to preview. And, well, the Brown side is fairly simple, Bloom.
Yeah.
Choose Nick Chubb as much as possible. Have Kareem Hunt, not as the sleeper of the week, just as your normal flex play. Everyone else is random. Are they going to continue using David Njoku? We talked about him plenty on the waiver wire show. So, some questions, but really the formula is simple. On the road in Atlanta, shove the ball down their throat with Nick Chubb.
Yeah, Nick Chubb says, I'll take it. And what has changed from our preseason outlook for this offense is Jacoby Brissett's good. Jacoby Brissett is a quality quarterback in this offense, and he's made Amari Cooper someone. We're not getting start-sit questions about Cooper. He's in. They obviously have chemistry. And by the way, I'll add this because now it may make more sense, because folks have been watching Amari Cooper the last few weeks and saying, why did Dallas just give him away? They have cap room. And Ed Werder And see, so on a scale of 1 to 10, when someone's reporting on the Cowboys reliability, if it's Edward or what's the number?
It's 11.
11. Yeah, he said the owner Jerry Jones was very unhappy with Amari Cooper for not getting vaccinated and missing 2 games last year.
Oh, YouTube, don't demonetize us, please.
Right, I didn't say it. So,
Right.
but my point is, so you're right if you say, wow, Amari Cooper doesn't look on decline or washed up at all. Why did the Cowboys just move on from him? And there's now potential explanation of that. Too bad we didn't know that like months ago. It might have changed our approach to him, but we didn't know Jacoby Brissett was going to play so well and fit so well in this Kevin Stefanski offense. So Chubb's in, Hunt's in. Hunt had a carry from the 1 and the 3 last week, just didn't convert. Chubb ended up finishing that drive. So if he gets that touchdown, we're not even thinking about it. This offense is good. It's going to get even better probably when Deshaun Watson is back. And then there's David Njoku. And this is a big data point for us because Njoku's been on the field like 90% of the time the first 3 games. He was just barely used in the first 2 games. And then in the 3rd game, he went off. Now, is that a matchup issue with Devin Bush and Miles Jack in the middle of that Steelers defense? Or in this Atlanta defense has some issues in the middle of the too. So, again, it's tough to tease these things apart until we get more data points. But this is a really big data point of whether it was a 1-week wonder for Njoku or he has arrived.
He has arrived. Atlanta's record to be the same with Desmond Ridder. And I'm not a Desmond Ridder fanboy, Bloom. Like, I understand and appreciate, one, his moxie, which he plays with, his leadership skills, certainly. He's a modern-day quarterback that can run around the ball, and he can make all the throws. But his decision-making is not so good right now. But if he's a rookie and you're really going to have this thing hanging over you every week, doesn't it feel like that?
Yeah.
And I know we're talking about Ridder because whatever. We're from Atlanta. You're Cordero Patterson, right? You'll consider Drake London and Kyle Pitts did something. So thank God for that. But wouldn't they have the same record with Ridder and he'd be getting experience and you'd be able to see like if he's the future or not?
Right.
Because it seems like if Mariota loses or looks bad or throws a pick, they might put in the kid. Well, if it's really that flipping close, sorry, Bloom. I feel like cussing today. And I can't. So I have to say flipping instead of something else. Yeah. And they have to say Mariota instead of Ridder.
Yeah. Both with Ridder and Willis, and maybe Sam Howell too, you wonder if there is a bit of urgency the further we get into the season to see what do you have in these quarterbacks, because you're going to have big decisions to make for these teams going forward and with next year's quarterback class. So we'll think about that. And with Ridder, the only other thing I'll add with Ridder's outlook that is interesting is how the Cincinnati program did a total 180, elevated greatly while he was there. And it has to be at least in part because of him. And
he had some ballers around him too.
He did. They had the best.
I've ran into some Ridder fanboys, and I'm like, it wasn't just him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alec Pierce, right? Alec Pierce looked pretty good for the Colts last week. Yeah, they got so many players drafted this year. It was unprecedented. But still, the quarterback is an important rudder for a team. Rudder. Getting back to Mariota, he's still a streamer. You could do worse at quarterback. I play him over maybe like Tom Brady until things get going for Tampa, because you do have 2 rushing touchdowns. You do have him throwing the ball pretty well to Drake London, who's an every week start at this point, and then Kyle Pitts. And I guess the question with Kyle Pitts here is, do you put your best cover guy, Denzel Ward, who's not quite a long, fast corner like a Marshawn Lattimore, right? Not a long, fast corner that you look at and you're saying, okay, he's going to match up one-on-one. Seattle didn't have anybody that could match up one-on-one with Pitts. Denzel Ward is a little bit on the small side for a quote-unquote shutdown corner, but still, this is perhaps how you're going to test him. But if Ward is on London, then maybe it could be a bigger game for Pitts. The Falcons do have fight. I will say this. Arthur Smith has this team playing with a lot of fight. The Browns should be 3-0, right? I mean, the game they lost to the Jets was just absurd that they lost. They should be 3-0. And the Falcons could be 3-0. Remember, they lost to the Saints. They blew it. And Younghoe Koo did have a long kick, but it was blocked at the end. And then they were driving down the field against the Rams, even though they were down 28-3 in that game. So kudos to Arthur Smith, because this is still one of the worst rosters in the league. Mm-hmm. Having this roster being competitive in any way, shape, or form against other NFL teams, especially one that just won the Super Bowl last year, I think we got to say Arthur Smith's doing a good job getting this team's attention and having them give their all.
Give it your all. Commanders and Cowboys, they're giving it their all. And I think there was already a Dak report out that he's remaining idle again. We're recording Wednesday morning just for your information purposes. But I saw that come across the wire yet. Boom, I haven't updated it. But like I saw, okay, like Dak, what he's doing. And I always do that today for some reason. I start with the second team. Let's start with the first team, the Commanders. And well, Carson Wentz. You keeping it together with Carson Wentz? Are you keeping it together? As they honestly, by the time we're in week 4, Bloom, when's Brian Robinson back? Like week 6?
Yeah, week 5, week 6.
Yeah, week 5, week 6. Yeah, so hold it together, stay on target. And the divisional game, you're traveling to Dallas to face off against your divisional foe. So the Commanders, with all that talent at wide receiver, Logan Thomas, is he healthy or not? I feel like we need a ticker. Like a stock ticker at the bottom, like Logan Thomas. He just had Starbucks. Logan Thomas. He just stepped off the curb wrong. Oh God, he's out for 3 weeks. Kidding. But like, okay, where's our Logan Thomas pulse check? Like, where's he at? Is he gonna play? Is he good? The stress of having Logan Thomas on your roster, Bloom. Let's talk about these Commanders in this big one coming up against Dallas.
Maybe we don't stress about the Commanders in this one just because this looks like a matchup where Carson Wentz's weakness and the Cowboys' defensive strength are not going to make for good things for Washington. And we can look back at Washington's first 3 weeks. That win against Jacksonville is looking good, right? That's looking like a quality win.
Yeah.
And then even hanging with Detroit and pushing them a little bit in the second half, that's decent. And there's nothing shameful about that. Not this Lions team. But then they face Philadelphia. Yeah, the SS Wentz was taking torpedoes last week. Right, we're taking on water, and that's Dallas, right? That's Dallas's defense. And this is another discussion about there are sacks that are on the offensive line. There's sacks because they're just really good pass rushers, right? And then there's sacks that are on the quarterback. And Wentz took a handful of sacks that are on the quarterback last week. And with Wentz ceased, you want to talk about a meter. The meter is how is Carson Wentz feeling inside, right? Because you can watch in a game and see how he gets shrunk down to the size of like the head of a pin, and he makes decisions and plays in this way and you see the team follow him, and you've seen this trajectory, this up and down with Wentz within a season, sometimes within a game. And I just think Dallas has the guys to get after him. So if we're going to look at this from a fantasy standpoint, I mean, you still, even in garbage time last week, Curtis Samuel's going to get his. He's the easiest one. You're going to keep playing Curtis Samuel. It's almost like by design. He is going to get his carries and his receptions, short receptions. Terry McLaurin, just because of the chance of a big play, even in garbage time, you're probably going to keep playing him. Jahan Dotson is in a matchup like this, I think, on your bench, maybe even not an essential hold as we're seeing this offense come back to earth, Wentz come back to earth, and then Thomas, the same thing. You did get a garbage time touchdown from Antonio Gibson last week. Great. Can't count on that. It's more of a J.D. McKissick game, I think, when they're playing from behind, especially in the passing game, even though what Gibson does have passing game value, they're keeping that role pretty dedicated to J.D. McKissick. But again, in closing, if the Dallas defense is on your waiver wire, you might want to pick them up and play them this week.
Yeah, pick them up and play them this week. Let's talk about the Cowboys offense and more Tony Pollard, please. Can you do what you did earlier? And is Michael Gallup going to play? That's what we're watching. Again, Wednesday morning, we'll watch. But the plan was for him to be ready in week 3. He wasn't ready. As I quote Kevin Hart. So what about this week, and how does Gallup's return potentially impact what the Cowboys do? And again, we're watching a banged up Dak Prescott. So lots of movement here with the Cowboys side.
Yeah. And the good thing about how this has gone since Prescott got hurt, yes, they were beaten pretty handily in week 1, but now they've won 2 straight games and they've righted the ship. And remember, this is a Dallas team that I think their defense is the front facing. I don't even know what I'm trying to say here. The point is the defense, I think, is carrying the team, and they're comfortable with that. Cooper Rush is doing enough, and you have the running game. So we know Cooper Rush can get enough passes to CeeDee Lamb to keep him in our lineup. And if Michael Gallup's not back, then no Browns of what the heck flex here. Washington's defense is one they're not afraid of at all. And I think it's Pollard and Zeke. It's both, right? Pollard's been good for 2 weeks in a row. Zeke got his rushing touchdown last week. This offensive line is playing better than expected, especially as run blocking, a unit that is getting back to where this team was 4 or 5 years ago. Or at least identity-wise, where they want to be. I don't think we're going to see Dalton Schultz. Even if we do, I think that, again, you see Noah Brown has a little more prominent place for Cooper Rush. And this is in some ways, this Dak Prescott injury could be an inspiring story for this team. And maybe this is what this team needed. How many teams have benefited from an us against the world mentality, right? When they're like, show them what they're saying about us. We're going to prove them wrong. And I think they're doing it. And they're setting up for some pretty good Dallas-Philadelphia games down the road this season, as we know that Philadelphia has asserted themselves as an elite team, at least to this point. But Dallas, when they get Dak Prescott back, they have a defense that can get pressure on the quarterback, gambling secondary. They have a running game. They have talent in the passing game, even without Amari Cooper. This is shaping up to be pretty good in the NFC East.
Yeah, and think about what that says about the players, because they're doing it with Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, and Jerry Jones overseeing everything. Yeah,
exactly. But you have the players kind of rallying like that together, and it just says a couple of things. One, the talent gap in the league isn't as grand as people seem to think it is. And then two, it's like, when you can overcome bad coaching, but it takes someone because it'd be easy for the Cowboys to be like, we suck. No, they're rallying. So you like to see that rally. It's not quite time for the rally hat yet bloom. Although if you turn your bucket hat around, it looks the same.
It does.
See, so you could be wearing a rally hat right now.
No one would even know.
You sneaky sneak.
Yeah.
All right. We got 4 games left. And of course, our sleeper of the week. So who is my sleeper of the week going to be? That is coming up for later in this program. Now, oh man, we got some stinkers. Now we end on a good one. We end on Jacksonville.
Stinker of the week.
Stinker of the week.
Brought to you by Febreze.
At least the Lions side. Here I go again, Blue. I'm talking about the home team. At least the Lions side is interesting. The Seattle side, I don't know. Gino's going to be efficient. They're going to clown Russ. Like, okay, go out there and go win, Seattle. Traveling to face the Lions. Lions are good. The Lions are solid. Now, the Lions are dealing with their own things. We'll get to in just a little bit. But I don't go into week 4 feeling mighty good about my fantasy teams and think, I'm going to plug in my Seahawks this week. Although I do love Kenneth Walker.
Yeah. We know at least Geno Smith's not going to be shy about throwing the ball. So that's good. We have 2 good weeks for Tyler Lockett in a row. And it may be number 3 because Jeff Okudah is starting to really emerge. These young cornerbacks around the league emerging. And that's probably bad for DK Metcalf. I mean, still probably play Metcalf as a what the heck flex at worst. It only takes one play and he can make those individual plays. But I would expect that Tyler Lockett is the better play of the 2. You have Will Dissly, a what the heck tight end. He scored in 2 out of 3 weeks. It is Detroit who just lost Tracy Walker. Hated seeing that. Walker was one of those players, I think, that the Matt Patricia era, using him, not using him, what is his role? I think in the Aaron Glenn defense, he was really breaking out and becoming one of the best safeties in the league. So that's a big loss for them. Rashad Penny is well ahead of Kenneth Walker in terms of snaps, in terms of touches. If you are going to play a Seattle back, it would be Penny. This could still be fluid because of the rookie. And I think you can see, as good as Penny is, Walker has some juice and some things that they can take advantage of. But yeah, Seattle, they had a game effort against Atlanta, but we're talking about bottom third of the league teams. I don't think Detroit is a bottom third of the league team. And I do think Detroit's offense is going to be good enough to force Seattle into pass mode for this one.
Yeah, and force them into pass mode. And you're Anthony in the chat rooms like, when should we stash Jameson Williams? Right. We just talked about Brian Robinson a little bit earlier, right? Jameson Williams coming up next. Coming up next is the Lions conversation, which of course revolves around Jamal Williams. You can always tell who the hot player of the week is because we're like 4 shows into the week on our YouTube channel for Footballguys. Thanks for getting us over 17,000 subscribers, by the way, everybody.
Yeah.
And I think this week, half Eddie of our thumbnails are Jamal Williams. My buddy Jamal Williams, love Jamal, really, really good young man. And now, well, people say this, Bloom. I think I saw this in the chat room yesterday. He's better as a backup. Like, he's one of those players better as a backup. Okay, maybe, but he's getting the opportunity now with DeAndre Swift banged up. Amon-Ra St. Brown has a little bit of an ankle thing. Again, Wednesday morning, we'll watch that for the sun god. And then, TJ Hawkinson, do something. What's that meme with that character with the stick where he's poking at the floor? Hey, TJ Hawkinson, do something.
Do something.
Mm-hmm.
He did score a touchdown last week, at least. You like Jared Goff in this one. I think that you're seeing this offense is going to function pretty well. We're going to watch Amon-Ra St. Brown's status. You're going to play him regardless. But if he's limited practice, if he's even a game time decision or questionable, that might make you more inclined to play Josh Reynolds as you see that downfield chemistry with Jared Goff. They've been playing together for a while, going back to the Rams. Even DJ Chark, if St. Brown misses this game, or if they're saying, hey, he's going to be on a snap count or something like that, now Chark becomes interesting because this offense is functioning so well. And then, like you said, TJ Hawkinson, do something. He's maybe still in your lineup because if you drafted him, it's not like there's any tight ends that came after that you're really excited to plug in over him. You just hope he does something. You know that Jamal Williams is going to do something. You know he's going to be the goal line back. Now you wonder, here's your sleeper of the week, Cease. Craig Netflix Reynolds, who the team really likes. And he won that number 3 job. And you wonder if this is maybe going to be a little more of a committee where it isn't necessarily Williams getting 20, 25 touches and Reynolds just as a change of pace or backup. But we see both of them kind of the way they handle Swift and Williams. And of course,
that's not an indictment on Williams either.
It's not at all. No, it's saying that Reynolds is a good player and this is a good offense. Remember, this offensive line is also getting healthier. The interior offensive line was banged up to start the season. So, and again, I don't even know if we said this. We said it looks like DeAndre Swift is going to miss potentially 2 weeks with the week 6 bye. They want to maybe get him 3 weeks to get his shoulder better. So that's why we're talking about Jamal Williams. That's why we're talking about sleeper of the week, Craig Netflix Reynolds. People are dropping Netflix, though. Maybe we needed to change it to Craig, I don't know, Hulu, Craig Prime. I don't know.
Well, it's not going to be HBO Max much longer. So. The streaming wars. Cut cable and have 10 streaming services that are more expensive than cable.
Why do we always end up worse off?
Oh, Bloom. We're not starting meet in the middle today, buddy.
I know.
We'll have to wait on that. Just wait. Hold, please. Everybody hold. Tennessee and Indianapolis. Oh, we're not holding in there. We're jumping right in. Tennessee side. Can I talk about Malik Willis, please? I don't get really inspired by Treylon Burks and Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry against the Colts, who now are feeling themselves. The role of confidence in this league is larger than anyone will ever want to admit. So Indianapolis coming off that big win over KC, Tennessee trying to put up a fight in their division. How can they put up a fight? But Bloom, since we're selfish, how, from a fantasy perspective, can you harvest that fight?
Well, I think that in this game, you're going to have to play Derrick Henry, but this has been a brick wall Indianapolis run defense. And remember, it was the second Indianapolis game when Henry went down last year, and he had something like 28 for 68, I think, when he went down with the foot injury. So you're going to play Henry, but lower expectations here. And what that might mean, if Indianapolis can actually get out to a lead, is you could see more Tannehill to Woods and Burks. So this is an important data point game for Treylon Burks because data-wise, he had his highest route participation. So when they were running a pass play, Burks was out there running a route. Didn't result in much in terms of production, but could be laying the groundwork. And I think you saw almost universally out of Tennessee camp, the Tennessee beat writers, and there's a lot of good ones, saying, so it looks like Burks is going to be, from a fantasy standpoint, a player that makes an impact maybe around week 8. Right, as the season goes on. And the book on him coming out of Arkansas was that he's more of a raw receiver. So we could be seeing he's getting not as green. And this is going to be a week that I think they need him to make some plays because, again, Derrick Henry can't necessarily be the engine of this offense. Watch and see if Derrick Henry is going to get more involvement in the passing game. That's something that changed last week. 5 for 58 he had in the passing game last week. That could help you out from a fantasy standpoint and also make this offense less predictable. So I do think that you're looking at this as a defensive battle, much like the Kansas City Indianapolis game last week. But as you said, Cease, the important thing for Indianapolis is Matt Ryan has confidence. They have confidence in Matt Ryan. And what a difference a week makes.
What a difference in how things can turn it all around. Just when I thought you couldn't possibly be any dumber. you go and totally redeem yourself if you are
Yeah.
the Indianapolis Colts, and you do it. I mean, just playing keep away, basically. You don't have to do that this week. So now feel the confidence with Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman and your trio of tight ends. I want to see if Jelani Woods gets a little bit more bloom. Like when you perform like that on a limited amount of snaps, maybe there's more snaps for you. And a very talented tight end, like we said in the waiver wire show. We will be talking plenty about the guys like Isaiah Likely. We'll talk plenty about a Trey McBride eventually. We'll talk plenty about a Jelani Woods eventually, maybe more now after his performance last week against Kansas City.
Yeah, I'll watch that. I'm not saying pick up Woods or put him in your lineup or anything like that, but getting 2 touchdowns, including a game-winning touchdown, that gets some notice. Alec Pierce, I think, had 3 for 61 last week, but a lot of strong reviews of his play and him coming along. So even my guy Ashton Doolin, maybe he went back to the bench because Pierce, one of those Cincinnati guys that Desmond Ridder was throwing to. And Pittman was back. Not a big game last week in terms of big plays, but for PPR leagues, he was still that main target you're getting. And again, with Ryan and his confidence renewed, yeah, Pittman's in there. Pierce, a what the heck flex, a sleeper of the week candidate, brought to you by Sleeper. And then you get to Jonathan Taylor, and you want to get Jonathan Taylor going. Now, he didn't quite get going in the 2 games against Tennessee last year, but we saw last week against Kansas City, even though he wasn't breaking big plays, the team is going to continue to give him those shots. Look, he's like Derrick Henry 3 years ago, right? Where the team is going to be rewarded by continuing, even against heavy boxes. Because remember, even against heavy boxes, if you can get past that second level, clear sailing. So unlike Henry, I think Taylor, you could see a game where Taylor has, say, 22 carries, and on 19 carries, he gains like 35 yards. And then on the other 3, he gains 150. I think that's the kind of game you could have here. And this is a good one because I think if you're looking at Malik Willis and wondering when is he going to start, that Jacksonville looks like a contender already is a good part of that equation for at what week, because I think everybody agrees that the Titans have to be out of the playoff hunt for us to see Willis. So you want to see Jacksonville continuing to look like they're the class of this division. And then this game, see, this is a game that if Tennessee wins this game, it might put back when Willis plays by like 3 weeks. But if they lose this game, we're starting to accelerate that doomsday clock for Ryan Tannehill.
Right. And when are they just going to move on? Like we're going to move on to Bears and Giants up next.
Oh boy.
Honestly, Bloom, I kind of want you to do both in one take.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I want to get to Jacksonville, Philadelphia. That's much more interesting. Right. 2, this bores the hell out of me. And 3, all I'll do is make fun of fantasy analysts who are like, go get Cole Kmet, everybody. So let's move on. But just do these 2 teams. It's Bears and Giants, and it's probably not great.
The Ring. Have you ever seen The Ring?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or classic, the Japanese version, of course. You want to see the Japanese version.
Yes.
Ringu, I think it was called, right? The premise, like you watch the TV and it like sucks you in, or that's poltergeist, but like it creates bad things, right?
Right.
Like maybe I should have said poltergeist. I mean, this is going to be some sort of new form of energy, right? Like they never made cold fusion work. Maybe if you get 2 offenses that are this bad on the field, it can create some sort of vortex. Just watch you don't get sucked into it, right? There's so many other good games to watch this week. It's just going to be so bad. This is what the Justin Fields Bowl, right? It is Khalil Herbert time. You're going to play him. Let's see how big
Khalil Herbert makes me happy.
Yeah, and we'll see how big Treston Ebner's role is here as a backup, a deep sleeper with heck flex, and that's it. And with Saquon Barkley, here's the other side. Saquon Barkley is the most valuable running back of fantasy football. And every time we look at a running back like Najee Harris, who's being held down by his surroundings, here's Saquon Barkley saying, it doesn't matter what my surroundings are. Dun, dun, dun. He's just going to do it. And actually, the fact that Sterling Shepard went down, he had 10 targets last week. Barkley did. He'd probably get 10 targets a game. At least Brian Dable is rationally coaching. With Shepard down, we're going to see Richie James maybe becomes a marginal wide receiver 3 flex for PPR. Is Kadarius Toney healthy enough to play? There's so much theoretical opportunity for him now with Shepard hurt out for the year.
Do they like Toney? Like,
yeah,
we're clearly seeing with the Giants. Like, if you're not in with the coaching staff, they're just like, hey, you're healthy, doesn't matter.
Right. This goes back to the Mike Gesicki talk, right? That there's that sometimes we're like, why aren't they using him? Why are they using him this way? It's because of the coaches and the relationship, and that's definitely something that is in progress, under construction for Kadarius Toney. And one of these teams is going to be 3-1 at the end of this game.
So there's that. The NFL, our guy K1, stinker of the week. All right. Yeah. It goes from that and it goes to a great one to finish off. Fantastic game that we are ready to talk about. Thank you, Jacksonville, for making this thing interesting, because it's Jacksonville and it's Philadelphia. And we're going to start on the Jaguar side, Bloom, because James Robinson is the reason why the sun comes up every day. Like that, the dude has power. All right. He has the power to propel your fantasy team. And Trevor Lawrence is getting it, man. You love to see it. You love to see Trevor Lawrence, it clicking for that young man. He was so good in college, Bloom, and it was on an echelon that we normally don't talk about with college quarterbacks. And to see his struggles last year, and I know Pervy Meyer was there, but like to see his struggles last year, it was almost discombobulating. Like, what? That's not him. That's not him. We're seeing glimpses of him. He's coming through. His play is coming through, and what he does to run this offense. So Jacksonville, yeah, go put up a fight. Our man Jason Wood's going to be in the stands there at Lincoln. Is it still Lincoln Financial Field?
The Link.
Okay. And so our man Wood will be there. I might be rooting for Jacksonville in this one. Just saying.
Yeah.
Low-key Jags fan.
Yeah, this is great. The Doug Peterson Bowl. This is great for Jacksonville. And again, something we can file this under is when you have a coach as bad as Urban Meyer, and I don't mean bad in terms of tactical decisions or how he runs the team. I mean somebody that, maybe not all of us cease, but a lot of us have worked somewhere where, to use the NFL term that people like, it's a clown. You're working for a clown, right? You know the person in charge is a
evil
clown.
clown.
Yeah, an evil clown. Aren't they all evil? Is there any such thing as a clown? That's redundant, right?
Right.
Anyway, for some reason, I'm remembering Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Remember that movie? That great horror classic. This is like, we're just going to bring up all these. This is the horror movie theme. And it was a horror movie for the Jags last year. It was a horror movie if you're playing for that team. And how different it is. And Doug Peterson and folks behind the scenes who know these coaches as human beings, you couldn't get more different, right? I mean, really, you're going all the way to the other end of the spectrum with Doug Peterson. And look at the results. And not just the results, again, as I've said, Trent Baalke, keeping him was the right move. Who knew? Because they acquired players who fit in a scheme that maximizes the strengths of the players they acquired and the players they have, i.e. Trevor Lawrence. So on the other hand, this Philadelphia defense, yes, Detroit clawed their way back into the game in week 1. That's probably more about Detroit's offense, which we know is good. And otherwise, Minnesota looked miserable. Washington, even more miserable. And this defense has good players at all 3 levels. So this is going to be a real test for Jacksonville. This is going to be a game, I think, that is the most important data point to date for both teams, whether we're looking at either offense versus defense matchup. Now, from a fantasy standpoint, that does create the potential for a catastrophe for this offense. But you think also another thing that's really elegant about how this offense is designed, I mean, it's like the old West Coast Bill Walsh kind of offense. I mean, how do you thwart and stymie a quick passing offense that has a lot of guys who can get open early in progressions? How can you just put the clamps on that? I don't think you can. So you're looking at Zay Jones, who leads the teams in receptions, by the way, as a wide receiver 3 flex. Christian Kirk is a wide receiver 1, maybe more of a wide receiver 2 this week because of the matchup. You're probably not going to play Marvin Jones and Evan Ingram. But again, that's okay. You can take away these guys, but then you have other viable targets. The spending spree in free agency is really working out for this team. And James Robinson, man. See, let's just add him to the list, right? Like, there should be a special wing of the Hall of Fame. Let's call it the Frank Gore wing, which is for running backs who are as good as they could possibly be in any universe, right? You could run a simulation of the universe 1,000,000 times, and this is as good as James Robinson could possibly be. And what else is there to say? Obviously, he's number 3, I think, among running backs so far this year. And then you see, again, was a 4th down call, going for it on 4th down when he had his big 50, 51-yard run for a touchdown that made his week last week. And you just feel like, see, this is that classic fantasy analysis. If you take away his best play. But the thing is, Jacksonville's play calling and offensive design is creating those plays and those opportunities for him. So that's bunk analysis. He's going to keep, even if it is, again, like I was talking about with Taylor, because you saw him earlier this year. He had a long touchdown run in the big 24-0 win over Indianapolis, where it was a 37-yard touchdown run. And I think he had something like 23, 24 carries for 60 some yards. And all of his yards were after contact, all of his positive yards. And he still came through. I mean, again, Indianapolis run defense, good. And he still comes through. So you got to think that even though Philly's defense has been outstanding, Jacksonville's offense is going to find ways to come through. And Jacksonville's defense has been outstanding, but nobody has figured out how to slow down this offense yet.
Nobody has figured it out, and Jalen Hurts has figured it out. I think that's the main thing here. And I don't think we talked about Doug Peterson enough leading up to the season, Bloom, like just that impact it would have there. But you're seeing the strides from these two quarterbacks. You're seeing the strides from Trevor Lawrence, and you're seeing Jalen Hurts being like, I don't even need to run.
No,
I don't need to run. I can work this thing, and having that talent around him and the plethora of weapons that you see from this Eagles offense. That's why it's a joy to watch this team. You can't always say that about Philadelphia. And when Jalen Hurts kind of proving the doubters wrong, what did you say earlier, right? Talking about how with the Cowboys, another NFC East team, when it's like, oh, chips are down. I don't think the chips were necessarily down for Jalen Hurts, but he certainly felt the pressure of, if you get A.J. Brown, they put all this stuff around you, you better make strides as a passer or they will look to move on. Howie Roseman is addicted to trades.
yeah.
Like, they would move on. And there's no way in hell they'll move on. Jalen Hurts is looking at that bag, right?
Mm-hmm.
Saying, how much can I get?
Yeah. And I suppose, Cecil, if we reverse engineer this and say, could we have seen this coming? The one thing that stands out to me about Jalen Hurts, and this is something, Cecil, we've talked about the mental, spiritual, emotional aspects of being an NFL player, confidence, and some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
How many times already in his career, before he was drafted in the second round, did Jalen Hurts have to bring himself back from a setback in the arc of his career, right? You know, going back to Tua replacing him in the national championship game, and then having to be the backup and come in when Tua got hurt in a huge game, and then playing in Oklahoma, and just doing these different things to it reinforces a belief in self, right? It reinforces a belief that no matter what you're facing, no matter what the odds are, no matter what people are saying about you, you are still the master of your destiny. And again, we were talking about this on the couch with Chicago. We're going to compare and contrast Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts. That Chicago's done nothing to help Justin Fields succeed. I don't know if it would have changed anything, but I do know that if you put Jalen Hurts on Chicago, we might not know that he's this good, right? So Howie Roseman, we're going to say that name again, and what he has done to surround Jalen Hurts with talent and set him up for success. And he's exceeded everyone's expectations, except maybe Jalen Hurts' expectations. And the other thing I think that you notice about Jalen Hurts is he's very mild-mannered, right? I mean, it's that confidence, it's that quiet confidence that I think his teammates are definitely responding to. What a great matchup this week. So Jalen Hurts, it's a tough matchup. You look at this Jags front seven, my oh my. And I said we got to do something with this A-wall, these four linebackers, Allen, Walker, Oluokun, and Lloyd. This is awesome. Shades of the Dome Patrol, right? But Ben Fennell. I don't know if I've said Ben Fennell's name on here before. Just one of the smartest football people, like one of the most knowledgeable about the game, up on everything. I forget what his official job title is. I think it's Ben Fennell with 2 N's and 2 L's, NFL. Don't quote me on that. But he said, how about the front three, too? Not just the linebackers. So it's the front seven. Roy Robertson Harris, UTEP two-step, among others. They're Foley Fatukasi, they picked up from the Jets free agency, and again, these are not guys that you think of as pass rushers, but they're freeing up Travon Walker. They're freeing up Josh Allen, freeing up the inside linebacker. So this front seven looks really good. So it is going to be a test. Miles Sanders, of course, is going to be in your lineup as a running back 2 or a flex. Maybe it's a Kenneth Gainwell game. At least we're going to watch this. If Jacksonville makes this a close game, which Philly hasn't really had yet this year, does that increase the size of Kenneth Gainwell's role? Of course, you're playing Devontae Smith. You're playing A.J. Brown. This is kind of like Waddle and Hill. Not so much that they're interchangeable in terms of play calls, but in terms of fantasy, they'll take turns being fantasy wide receiver ones. Of course, you're going to play Dallas Goedert. And of course, hopefully, you'll just sit back, forget about your lineups. Let's enjoy this game. Let's enjoy the schedule makers. In part 2, we're going to have, by the way, which one do you watch, Cease? Do you watch this game? Do you watch Buffalo, Baltimore? Stay tuned for part 2.
Yeah, stay tuned for part 2. But before we are out of here and watch the video to the end, it helps the YouTube algorithm. Thank you for that.
And let the next video load. I think that's the next part.
Yes,
let the next video load. And then come back and comment once the show's over if you're here live. If you want to help us. But just hanging out with us and boosting
just hanging out with us helps us.
Yeah.
Who was in the chat room earlier? Was that Lester? Someone was talking about how like they get annoyed when there's like lesser fantasy shows that get more views on YouTube. It's not a measuring contest. I mean, I appreciate the sentiment. Certainly, I don't want to sound bad, but I definitely appreciate that sentiment. But boom, baby, we do this to hang out with our people and talk about football because we love football. There are people that have gamed the system and like have figured out with slick production values. How often does Sig's internet not even work?
Hey. New Orleans infrastructure, not the least organized city in the U.S. the most. I'll just say this, Cecil, on all this. I think it was Cato the Elder that said, this is one of the Bloom go-to quotes. I'd rather have people ask why there's no statue of me than why there is one.
Very good. Very good. But now it is time for our ever popular Sleeper of the Week.
It's time for the Sleeper of the Week, powered by Sleeper.
Here we go. Sleeper of the Week time, Bloom. And yeah, we can throw in a little bit extra LBs is coming up on Thursday night because Samaje Perine is that sort of player that I feel can be your sleeper of the week. I'm throwing him in as a what the heck flex. He is my sleeper of the week, not just because of what we did last week, but because Joe Mixon, he's fine. He's fine. It's a short week. Anytime I hear that from a player who's banged up on a short week, I'm like, who's his backup? Oh, is his backup good? Oh, I'm starting his backup. So Samaje Perine, rolling the dice. He is my sleeper of the week for part 1 of the week 4 preview. Bloom, who do you got?
Yeah. Again, I'll go back to old Craig, Netflix, Hulu, Prime, Reynolds, Disney Plus. It's just, this is a game. I think we saw what Cordell Patterson did to the Seattle run defense. We know, again, going back to Byron Leftwich saying this, you want to be multiple, not balanced, multiple. And I think even without DeAndre Swift, this team can be a run-first team or a team that uses the run to set up the pass. I think you will probably see that. I won't be surprised if both Jamal Williams and Craig Reynolds are good plays this week.
And there we go. Everyone stay tuned for tomorrow's show as we'll continue the preview of week 4 around the National Football League. But as we often ask and beg, like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. But most importantly, just come hang out with us, man. Come hang out with us. We create a space for you to come out and just let's hang out, just talk football. Let's be on that same vibe, same wavelength, right? Bloom, we were talking about being around the clowns. I thought you were going to take that in a different direction. Like, well, I mean, there's just really bad people. There are really, really bad people. And Urban Meyer, allegedly, or whatever I have to say, is one of those people.
Yeah.
So, and
by the way, if you go to the Fox pregame, I heard that there's something about Urban Meyer signs. They didn't like that. So please, if the Fox college football pregame in your town, bring Urban Meyer signs.
Keep doing
it.
Keep doing
more signs.
Well, you're telling college kids what not to do. You know what that's going to make them do?
Exactly.
Do exactly what you don't want them to do. So yes, more, please. College Game Day, greatest show on television. Bring the Urban Meyer signs. But okay, go forth and be awesome, but be around the right type of people. And that's the vibration, that's the energy that we pick up from all y'all. Hopefully you feel the same way because we love you and we're here for you. He is Sigmund Bloom. You follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. I am at Cecil Lammey. The show is at the Audible, saying thanks for watching, everyone. Stay tuned, and I command that you stay frosty.